Hello, I know I've been saying that I would have a video about the technical report, and the format for this has changed when we moved to the new textbook. So the we used to do a feasibility report or a now I can't even remember the name of an empirical research report, which was from a different textbook. It's a whole different format now, and so here is a video on what you will need to be doing. So let's see if I can get this to work. Okay. So your technical report is going to have 3 sections. There will be front matter, body, and back matter. The purpose of each: the front matter orients the reader to the subject, what it's about. It provides a summary for decision makers. So someone might not, a person making a decision on it, let's say, imagine you were going to submit this to your actual audience. They might get a lot of reports. They need to figure out which ones do I need to read, what information do I need. So that summary will allow a decision maker to know, do they need to read in more depth? What do they need to read? And it helps readers navigate the report and find relevant content. The body is the comprehensive account of the project. That is where you detail what happened, what you found. And the back matter provides your supplementary material and information. And by providing a list of sources, you let readers consult those sources. So the front matter for this report will consist of a title page, a table of contents, and an executive summary. If you would like to include a list of illustrations or figures, well, a list of illustrations, that's figures and charts. Markel talks about that. You are not required to do it for this project, though. If you happen to have many tables or charts, you may want to include one. That would go after the table of contents. But for now, I'm just going to talk about what everyone should have, which is a title page, table of contents, executive summary. Title page is easy. Title of the report, names of the writers involved, date of submission. Notice I said names of the writers involved, not names of people on your team. If there is someone on your team who did not contribute to this project, do not put their name on the report. Only people who have actually contributed to the project will have their name on the report, and only people who have their name on the report will get a grade for the project. So, writers involved, not people on your team. Then you'll have your table of contents. The table of contents should use the same headings and subheadings as the body of the report. So you don't just want your headings to be introduction, methods, results, right? It's not just the main sections of the paper. You should actually have specific headings and subheadings. Markel recommends at least every 5 pages you should have a new main heading, and you should have more subheadings than that. And whatever headings and subheadings you use in your report, they'll be moved to your table of contents. You should use the same attributes in terms of capitalization, bold, italics, font choice as the headings and subheadings do in the actual report. And the front matter, so that would be, we just talked about your table of contents, and your executive summary should have lowercase Roman numerals, like I. And the body of the report should have Arabic numerals, which are just regular numbers. And then you'll have your executive summary. An executive summary is a summary of the entire report addressed to the decision makers. It should be no more than 1 page. It should present the information in 2 parts. There should be a background, relatively brief, that explains the problem or issue. And then you'll want to have your major findings and implications. That is what you want to focus on. So there should be about a 1 to 2 sentence summary of your methods, very concise description of your methods, followed by a much longer 1 to 2 paragraph summary of your conclusions and recommendations. Then, the idea is if the decision maker wants to go in and read more about your research methods, they can, but they have the things you recommend or conclude right here. So that's what the executive summary is. It is part of the front matter before the official report starts. So then next, the body of the report, and that will have an introduction, methods, results, conclusions, and recommendations. And we'll talk at the end how, depending on the kind of report you write, these will vary a little bit, what's in them, but we're not going to worry about that yet. What do you do in an introduction? You identify your subject, you identify your purpose. That's pretty typical, right? What's the topic? Why should the reader care? You'll provide background information. You'll preview your sources. Let the reader know how did you research this? Summarize major findings and recommendations. Define key terms, indicate scope. Now, I think the one often that is hardest for students, and this is something you often don't do in an introduction in an academic report, you often don't summarize your major findings and recommendations at the beginning, right? You don't tell someone your conclusion in the first paragraph. That's just generally not the way academic writing works. But in workplace writing, that's what you do, right? If it's that, like, don't bury the lead, right? Keep the main point at the beginning. It's sometimes what's called an inverted organization, in that you start with your main point and then provide the details. So you're not giving anything away. It's not spoilers. You want to, in the introduction, let your reader know. So you don't want to say, in this report, we will be discussing whether or not the university should adopt a new learning management system, and then leave the reader to the conclusion to get there. No, you actually, in your introduction, would want to say, we recommend that the university adopts this specific system. And then you'll go into more detail. So you're actually previewing your conclusions right here in the introduction. Then you have a method section. What did you do, right? Explain what you did, what primary and secondary research did you do, and why did you do it? Why did you choose that type of research? I know this can particularly be an issue with interviews. So no one, I don't think, is doing campus safety this time. But one issue that's come up a lot is students will be, let's say they're doing a report on campus safety. And, well, we're going to do a student survey about campus safety, and come out and say, well, students feel really unsafe on campus. But then they'll look at statistics and say, but actually crime rates on the Wayne State campus are pretty low, right? Equivalent to other universities in Michigan, maybe a little lower. Well, what do you do with that interview then, right? So you can't use the interview to say, because students think campus is really dangerous, we need to do it because, like, so they're thinking the campus is dangerous doesn't actually prove the campus is dangerous, right? Now, if you were to interview students and say, have you been the victim of a crime on campus? That you could use to show that the level of danger on campus. But student perception of danger on campus wouldn't prove whether the campus was dangerous or not. But what it would tell you is, how do students feel about it, right? So you might say, we need more public interventions so students feel safer, because student feelings of safety are important. So I hope that makes sense. Always be sure, are you measuring perception of something, or are you measuring that thing? And the explaining the why did you do that, helps you get there. Results, what did you see or find? Now, in your results section, you want to objectively report on the data you discovered and or compiled. So that is reporting on both what you discovered through your primary research and what you compiled through your secondary research. In this section, do not comment on or interpret the results. This is just saying, here's what we found. Sorry, I just sneezed. I've never sneezed on a video before. Can't tell what I'm doing, but I'm fine. So you want to, this is objective, it's straightforward, it does not include commentary or interpretation. You would simply say here, let's say 54% of the students surveyed are unhappy with the current learning management system, right? You would not say, therefore, we should change it. That is for later. Here you just say what you found. Now the conclusion section is, what does it mean? Now is when you interpret and comment on your results. What are the implications of this research? You've told us what you found. Now you're going to tell us, well, why is this? What should I do with this information? What does it mean? How does it affect this issue or this organization? And then there's the recommendation section, which is, what should we do? So if you have a recommendation, if in the conclusion, right, I've done the research, I have discovered that I think we should adopt, I don't know, whatever new learning management system. I want to write that in a clear, actionable way, right? Sort of like we've talked about that, having clear, actionable recommendations. It needs to be something, you know, if I said, I think Wayne State University needs to select a new learning management system. Well, that's not really actionable, right? The action would be like, should research these other, right? Well, we'll get there in a minute. But if you have a specific recommendation, make it clear and actionable. If your recommendation does not follow from your conclusions, explain why. Now, this could be the case, right? Let's say you want to look into, should Wayne State, what would be the environmental impact of moving to solar panels in the dorms? I'm just making something up off the top of my head. Your research might find it would be awesome, right? It would be great for the environment if Wayne State did this. But maybe there is not money in the budget to do that. And instead, you can put solar panels on one building, right? So it might be possible that option A was actually the best course of action, but you can't do it. So you're going to recommend option B or doing nothing, and explain why. And you can suggest making no changes, or that none of the options you considered should be implemented. So again, let's say I was researching 3 course management systems. I don't like any of them, right? I could either say, I think Wayne State should stick with Canvas. It was a good choice, stay with it. Or I could say, I don't like any of these 3 options. I also discovered what we currently have is not satisfactory. Therefore, I am going to suggest that for now, no changes made, but we go on to research these 3 further options. So you have a lot of options in what you can do in a recommendation section. You just want to explain why. Then in your back matter, you want to have a reference section. Document all of your sources. Now you'll want to look into, and I'll show you guys this in a second, but you're going to want to document all your sources. That includes interviews. You want to list interviews, document everything, write down, you know, and there's ways to find out how to do that. Use the same citation format consistently and correctly. I'm not particularly concerned about whether you use MLA or Chicago or APA. I just want you to use the same format correctly and every time. So don't have some in MLA and some in APA. Just use the same format for everything. And then you might have appendices or appendixes. The book says appendixes. That's where you would include information or documentation that wasn't necessary in the body of the report, but might interest some readers. So maybe you would include a very detailed map, or a series of pictures of an intersection, or computations you did, or interview transcriptions of the entire interview, or all the results of your survey data, large charts and tables, right? Anything that would be a whole lot of information that could be of interest to the reader, but that they don't necessarily need. So now your 2 options are an informational report or a recommendation report. Both will have all of these sections. The difference is that in an informational report, you're providing information on a problem, issue, or procedure. You're going to present research describing the causes and implications of the problem. That's going to be your main concern. So let's say you want to look at student retention at Wayne State, right? It would be an informational report about Wayne State retention rates. You would want to look at what is causing low retention rates and what are the implications of that. Now, you probably would end up recommending a further course of study or maybe even a course of action. You still want to have that recommendation study. What is the next step? Now that you've gathered this information and presented it, what's next? But the focus is really more on the problem than on the solutions. And then, or you might choose a recommendation report. Then you provide information on 2 or more possible ways to approach or solve a problem, issue, or procedure. You're going to present research looking into the alternatives. So we'll need to know, right, what alternatives are there? What are the 3 different road materials that could be used to fix roads in Michigan? What are the 4 course management systems that Wayne State might want to use? What are the 5 possible ways for Wayne State to increase retention? And then you're going to compare them to a set of criteria that's been developed. So the criteria would be, here is what we need, right? We need a new course management system. Here's how much it can cost. Here are the features we need. And here is the timetable we need, right? And that's how you'll evaluate things. And then you'll recommend one of the alternatives, taking no action or doing further research. So that's the difference between the 2 reports. If you're not sure what your group is doing or what fits best, ask. Before I go, I just want to quickly, so one thing you can always do is go to Citation Generator. Lots of ones, Citation Machine, EasyBib, right? Just lots of them. If you go to a citation generator, pick the style you want. Let's say you're doing MLA. And then you basically just say, like, here's, the neat thing with this is a lot of things are sort of hard to know how. So let's say you do an interview. It actually shows you, here is how you would cite your interview. So you would say, right, you did the interview. Here's the title of it. Here's who you interviewed. Here's how. Here's who contributed. It'll create the citation, right? So even for somewhat more difficult, even for somewhat more just difficult things, raw data, brochures, databases, just things that might be a little bit more difficult to know, like, what am I supposed to do with this? If you go to a citation generator, it'll tell you exactly how to do that. So that is how that will work. So if you have any questions about the report, let me know. And